There's a moment you already know. You walk into a conversation certain of what you feel. You walk out of it, not certain of anything at all. Somewhere in between, the ground moved. And you didn't feel it move. You only felt yourself apologizing for something you didn't do. You call this confusion. It isn't confusion. It's a move on a board you didn't know you were playing on. Somewhere in your life, right now, there may be a hand on strings you can't see. Pulling a little here, slackening a little there. And every time you react exactly the way they expected, they learn a little more about which strings work best. This is not about villains in movies. This is not about obvious monsters. The most effective manipulation never looks like a wolf. It looks like a friend, a partner, a voice that sounds like it's on your side, right up until you notice you're the only one apologizing, the only one explaining, the only one shrinking. Here is what they are counting on: that you will keep reacting on instinct, that you will keep explaining yourself into smaller and smaller corners, that you will never step back far enough to see the whole board. Tonight you step back. 7 moves, 7 ways to take the strings out of their hands and put the board back under your control. By the end, you will not be the same player who started this game. Let's begin with the first move, the one that makes every move after it possible. Every manipulator survives on one single weakness in you: your short memory. Alone, every moment can be explained away. One cutting comment, one broken promise, one time they twisted your words until you no longer recognize them. Alone, each one sounds almost reasonable, maybe even your fault for making something out of nothing. This is the first trick, and it is the foundation for every trick that follows. They are not asking you to forgive one moment. They are counting on you never connecting it to the last one. You are not looking at incidents, you are looking at a shape. And once you see the shape, it does not disappear just because you look away. Most people do this. They ask after every encounter, "Was that okay?" The strategic person asks a different question. "Is this how it always goes?" That single shift in the question changes everything, because a pattern cannot be explained away the way a single moment can. A bad day is an excuse. 5 bad days aimed the same way, at the same person, are no longer an excuse. They are a signature. So build the timeline, not to build a case to present to them. They will never accept it anyway. Build it so you stop re-explaining away what some quiet part of you already noticed months ago. Here is the moment everything shifts. Instead of thinking, "Maybe I misread that," you think, that is the 3rd time. And a mind that can count to 3 is a mind that can no longer be gaslit into believing nothing is happening at all. This is not paranoia. This is the first crack of light in a room that has been dark for a long time. Once you see the shape of the pattern, the next move they make will not surprise you. You have already seen this exact move before. And a move you have already seen has lost most of its power over you. Everything else on this list depends on this first one. You cannot outmaneuver a game you keep insisting isn't being played. There is a reason a single moment is so easy to explain away, and a pattern is not. And understanding this reason is like learning the first rule of the board itself. A single moment always carries an alibi. They were stressed. It was a bad day. The words came out wrong. Every alibi is plausible on its own, and plausible is the only currency a manipulator ever needs, because plausible is enough to make you hesitate at the exact moment you should have moved. But an alibi does not survive repetition. No one has 5 bad days that all produce the exact same behavior, aimed at the exact same person in the exact same way. At that point, bad day stops being an alibi. It becomes a mask worn so often it has started to look like a face. So build the record, quietly, not as a weapon to swing at them. They will never accept it, regardless. Build it the way a strategist studies old moves before the next match. Date, situation, what was said, what it cost you. You are not doing this to prove anything to them. You are doing this so that the next time the same shadow crosses the same wall, you recognize it instantly. Instead of standing there, once again, asking yourself if shadows are even real. This is the moment most people describe later as finally seeing clearly. Nothing new happened in that moment. They simply, for the first time, allowed themselves to add up what they had spent months refusing to count. Here is something most people never notice. Every explanation you give a manipulator becomes a weapon they can hand back to you later. You say no to something simple. It should end there. Instead, you find yourself defending the no, then defending the defense, then somehow apologizing for having a reason at all. This is not a conversation. This is a trap with a name. Justify, argue, defend, explain. And the trap is not the argument itself. The trap is that as long as you are inside that loop, the conversation is never about their behavior. It is always, endlessly, about your justification. Most people believe a reasonable person always explains themselves fully. A manipulator knows this belief lives inside you before you ever open your mouth, and they built their entire strategy on it. The strategic person does something different. A decision does not require a defense. It only requires a statement. Listen to the difference. I can't lend you the money right now because I'm saving for something, and I already feel bad about even saying this, but this is a door left wide open. Compare it to this. I can't lend you the money right now. A door closed. Calm. Nothing to pull on. They will push. Why not though? That's not a real reason. This is not a request for information. This is a request for you to walk back through the open door you just closed. Do not walk back through it. Say the same words again in the same tone without new material. Like I said, I can't right now. Repeated once, unchanged, it stops sounding like an opinion they can argue with. It starts sounding like a wall. Remove your explanations from the board and you remove almost every piece they had left to play with. It is worth admitting how strange this feels the first time you try it, because the discomfort itself is part of the old design. Most of us were taught, long before we ever met a manipulator, that a good person always explains themselves fully. That silence after a no is somehow cold, or suspicious, or unkind. They know this belief lives in you before you ever speak, and the entire trap was built on top of it. So the first time you give a short, unexplained answer, your own chest may tighten, as if you've done something wrong. You haven't. That tightness is only an old alarm, ringing for a threat that no longer exists. Here is something that helps. Warmth and brevity are not opposites. I can't lend you the money right now, can be said gently, even kindly, and still leave nothing behind for them to take apart. Watch for the shift in tactics too. When why not fails, some will move from a question into something closer to a verdict. Wow, you've really changed. I guess I know where I stand with you now. This is not a new argument. It is the same locked door, wearing a different mask, hoping you'll open it anyway. The response does not change. You do not owe a defense to a verdict designed to bait one out of you. A calm, I hear that you're upset, my answer hasn't changed, accomplishes more in one sentence than 3 paragraphs of justification ever could. Manipulation is a game that requires speed. It cannot survive a slow, steady mind. The faster you answer, the more you are answering from raw feeling instead of judgment. And raw feeling is the exact terrain they know best. It is their home field. Do not meet them there. This is why an accusation, a sudden guilt trip, a cutting, "You always do this," lands hard in the moment and quietly falls apart hours later once your mind has caught up to your feelings. That gap between the sting and the clarity is not an accident of your psychology. It is the entire mechanism they are relying on. So take the gap on purpose instead of losing it by accident. I need to think about that. Let's talk about this once we're both calmer. Even nothing at all. A longer breath. A pause before a single word leaves you. A pause does 2 things at once. It pulls you out of the emotional spike where you are most persuadable. And it makes them uncomfortable because you have just taken away the fast reaction they built their entire opening move around. Watch closely and you will see it. Often in the silence, they will fill it themselves. Repeat the accusation, soften it, or say more than they meant to, simply because you refuse to rescue them from the discomfort of waiting. Delay is not retreat. Retreat is never facing it at all. Delay is choosing to face it with your full mind in the room, not just your racing pulse. It helps to arm yourself with a few lines in advance, because in the actual moment, the mind tends to go blank. And blank is exactly when the old automatic self takes the wheel. A few that work almost anywhere. I want to give this a real answer, so let me sit with it first. I'm not going to respond to that right now. Even a single word, wait, spoken out loud, buys you the exact gap you need to reclaim the floor. None of these require an explanation for why you need the pause. You do not owe a reason for needing time anymore than you owe a reason for any other decision you make. The pause is allowed to simply be the answer for now. There is something else worth knowing here. Manipulators tend to be unusually uncomfortable with silence for a very specific reason. Silence cannot be twisted. There is nothing in it to misquote, exaggerate, or later repeat back to you in a distorted shape. A pause is one of the only moves on this entire board that leaves no material behind at all. This is often where people discover something they didn't expect about themselves. Once they stop responding at the speed of panic, their instincts turn out to have been good all along. The problem was never bad judgment. It was judgment that never once got the chance to finish a thought before the reaction fired without it. This move happens quietly inside your own mind before it ever reaches your mouth. And it may be the most powerful one on this entire list. When someone twists reality in front of you, denies something you both know happened, or somehow makes you the villain of a story you never wrote, your instinct is to put yourself on trial. Am I too sensitive? Did I overreact? Am I actually the problem here? Here is the reframe that ends the trial before it begins. Their behavior is not a mirror showing you the truth about yourself. It is a window showing you the truth about them. Think about what it actually takes for someone to bend a shared reality, deny something you both witnessed, or need you to feel small in order for them to feel powerful. That is not evidence of your flaws. That is a confession, spoken in the only language they know how to use. So the practical version of this is a quiet, internal note, made in the exact moment it's happening, not maybe they're right. Instead, this is what it looks like when someone doesn't get their way, or this is the mask coming off, not my character coming apart. This single shift changes the entire emotional weather of the interaction. You stop auditing yourself for flaws that were never real to begin with. You start watching them instead, almost like a strategist studying an opponent's tendencies, gathering information about exactly who they are, rather than anxiously searching for evidence of who you secretly might be. An attack aimed at someone quietly thinking, "There it is again, interesting," lands in nothing like an attack aimed at someone desperately trying to prove their own sanity. One of those people is still playing. The other one has already stepped outside the board to watch the game from above. There is a deeper reason this single reframe changes so much, far beyond how it feels in one conversation. When you treat every accusation as a real verdict on your character, you spend your energy defending yourself, proving you are not selfish, not unstable, not too much. That is energy a manipulator never has to spend, because in that arrangement, they are never the one on trial. You are. Every single time you accept the premise hidden inside their accusation, the observer's chair flips that entirely. Instead of defending against a claim, you are studying a behavior. And a behavior, unlike an accusation, does not require your agreement to be true. It simply is what it is, whether you argue back or not. Here is a useful line to carry with you into the room. Instead of asking, "Am I really like that?" ask, "Is this actually about me, or is this what it looks like when they don't get their way?" That question alone does most of the work, because in far more cases than people expect, the honest answer is obviously the second one. This does not mean you are never wrong or never worth examining. Everyone is, at times. The difference is that real reflection feels precise and calm. It sounds like, "I could have handled that better." What manipulation produces instead is a vague, heavy sense of being generally bad, guilty of something you can never quite name. That fog, more than any single accusation, is usually the clearest signal of exactly which one you are standing inside. A boundary without a consequence is not a wall. It is a request written in sand, and a manipulator has made a career out of stepping over exactly that kind of line. You have probably said some version of this before. "Please don't speak to me that way. I need you to stop bringing this up." And you have probably watched it get crossed again within the week, sometimes within the hour. That is not because your line was wrong, it is because it was missing its second half. What actually happens if the line gets crossed again? A real boundary has two parts: the line itself and your response if it is crossed, not a threat hurled in anger. A calm, simple fact about what you will do, because your own actions are the only piece of this board you have ever truly controlled. Feel the difference. "Please stop raising your voice at me" is a request aimed entirely at their behavior, something you cannot control. "If you raise your voice at me, I will end this conversation, and we can speak again once things are calmer," is a wall, built entirely from your own actions, which you can always control. You cannot control whether someone respects a request. You can absolutely control whether you leave the room, end the call, or step away from the conversation. That is exactly why this version works, and the other one never did. And you must follow through, the very first time it is tested. A wall you do not defend teaches the opposite lesson. It teaches them that your word bends under pressure, which is the single most dangerous thing a manipulator can learn about you. This is not about punishing anyone. This is about turning your limits from a suggestion into architecture. Something solid enough that it no longer requires your constant defense because it simply stands. Most people stall here for one specific reason. They are waiting to feel angry enough or hurt enough to earn the right to finally enforce the wall. That wait rarely ends on its own because a skilled manipulator is an expert at keeping the damage just below the threshold that would make most people finally act. Here is what breaks that stall. Decide the wall and its consequence in a calm moment, far from any conflict, almost like drawing blueprints long before the storm arrives. Not, I'll figure out what to do if it happens again, but a specific decision made now, while your mind belongs entirely to you. That way, when the moment actually arrives, you are not deciding anything in real time. You are only following architecture your calmer self already built for you in advance. That distinction matters enormously because decisions made in the heat of conflict are precisely the ones a manipulator is most skilled at talking you out of. Expect resistance the first time a wall is actually tested. Tears, accusations that you are being cruel or controlling, a sudden convenient reasonableness, even a temporary improvement in behavior. None of this proves the wall was wrong. Often it is proof that it finally stands. The people who struggle most with this move were rarely people without walls at all. They were people whose walls never had a gate that actually closed, so no one around them ever had a reason to take them seriously. A manipulator is not chasing chaos for its own sake. They are chasing one specific thing: your guilt, your anger, your scramble to fix things, your desperate need for their approval. That reaction is the entire prize. Everything else is only the method used to extract it. So one of the most disarming moves available to you is simply refusing to hand it over. This does not mean going cold or performing an indifference you don't feel. It means refusing to let your face, your voice, your next 10 minutes be hijacked on command. If they say something built to wound and you answer with a flat okay or a calm noted instead of the performance they came for, you have just taken the entire prize off the table. Some call this becoming emotionally gray. Not cold, simply unreactive to bait specifically. Boring deliberately, in the one moment they were hoping for a show. Understand why this works so completely. A manipulator is, in a very real sense, constantly running an experiment on you, testing which strings still make the puppet move. The moment a string stops producing a reaction, most people eventually stop pulling it. Not because they've had a change of heart, because it has stopped being profitable. Expect an escalation before you see the calm. When the old strings stop working, they will often be pulled harder, faster, more desperately, searching for the setting that used to work. Stay steady through that phase. It is usually not a sign that this is failing. It is usually the surest sign that it is finally working. You are not trying to win an argument in this moment. You are trying to become an unprofitable use of their energy. And that, far more than any clever line you could deliver, is what actually makes the pulling stop. It is worth being honest about how strange this can feel while you are living it. Staying calm on purpose inside a moment built specifically to provoke you can feel almost dishonest at first, like a feeling suppressed rather than a reaction chosen. You are not suppressing anything. You are simply refusing to hand your feelings over on demand in the exact moment someone is trying to harvest them for a reaction. You can still feel every bit of the frustration, the hurt, the anger. You are only choosing not to broadcast it live, to the one person who profits most from watching it happen. There is also a difference worth knowing between this and simply going numb, or vanishing into silence out of fear. Numbness is born from feeling like there is no other option left. What you are building here is born from choice. You could react, and fully able to, you are deciding this specific string is no longer worth pulling. One more truth to carry with you. This tends to work over time, not instantly. The first few times you refuse to react, do not expect the old pattern to collapse in a single evening. It never built itself in one evening either. What you are actually doing, move by move, is quietly changing the odds until reacting to you stops feeling worth the effort at all. Everything before this move was about staying inside the game and changing how you play it. This last move is different because sometimes the smartest move left on the board is to stop playing it at all. Here is the truth some people spend years avoiding. Some manipulation is not a misunderstanding waiting for the right words to dissolve it. Some of it is simply who a person has decided to be. And no clever strategy, no perfect boundary, no flawless response is going to rewrite that decision for them. So the real question eventually stops being, how do I win this exchange? And becomes something much larger. How much of my one life does this dynamic get to occupy? For some situations, that looks like distance. Contact reduced to logistics only, no emotional access granted, no more conversations that circle back to nowhere at 2 in the morning. For situations where you cannot fully step away, it looks like staying deliberately flat, factual, and uninteresting to provoke, offering the board nothing left to play against. And for some situations, the most strategic move available to you is simply leaving the board entirely. Not because you lost, because you finally saw there was nothing left on that board worth winning. This is often the hardest move on the entire list, not because it is complicated, but because it asks you to release the hope of a different ending. The ending where they finally understand, finally apologize, finally change. Releasing that hope is not surrender. For most people, it is the exact moment they get their life back. You do not owe anyone unlimited access to you simply because they demand it. Knowing precisely when to fold the board and walk away may be the single most advanced strategy on this entire list. If you are unsure whether you have already arrived at this point, here is a question that cuts through the fog faster than almost anything else. After every one of your last several encounters with this person, do you leave feeling more like yourself or less like yourself? Healthy conflict, even difficult conflict, usually still leaves you recognizably you. Tired perhaps, frustrated perhaps, but still you. If instead you consistently walk away smaller, more uncertain of your own perceptions than you were an hour before, that is not a communication problem waiting to be solved. That is the shape of the entire pattern, finally spelling itself out in full. It is also worth saying plainly, choosing distance or choosing to leave entirely does not mean every move on this list failed. More often, it means they worked exactly as designed. You saw the pattern. You stopped over-explaining. You delayed the reactions they were counting on. You stopped mistaking their mirror for the truth. You built a wall with a real gate. You stopped feeding the reaction they came for. And through all 7 of those moves, calmly, deliberately, you learned something true. That this particular game was never going to end differently, no matter how skillfully you played it. That is not defeat. That has always been the entire point. Every move on this list points back to the same hidden truth. Their entire method depends on one thing: you reacting fast, explaining endlessly, doubting your own eyes, handing your reactions over for free, again and again. Remove any single piece of that, and the whole structure begins to fold in on itself. You do not need to become cold. You do not need to become someone calculating, someone you no longer recognize in the mirror. You only need to become someone who moves on purpose instead of on command. That is the entire transformation. Not a clever line delivered at the perfect moment. Not a victory they will ever admit to. Just you, steady, unreadable, still standing, while they run out of moves that used to work every single time. The puppet does not become the puppeteer by cutting the strings out of anger. It becomes the puppeteer by simply refusing to move the next time the strings are pulled. If even one of these 7 moves felt like it was describing your life right now, it probably was. Save this video. The next time you're standing inside that exact moment, you are going to want to remember precisely which move applies. And if you want to go deeper into recognizing whether the person across from you is simply manipulative or something far more specific, far more calculated, I have an entire video breaking down exactly how to spot a narcissist, linked right here. Subscribe for a new video every week, uncovering the hidden patterns behind manipulation, narcissism, and human behavior. Because the moment you finally see the board clearly is the moment you can never be moved on it again.